All right, 7 underrated drafts. Underrated drafts here. So this is, I try to keep my ear to the ground, pay as much attention to what the people out there are saying, and then I'm going to give, which is subjective, and maybe some, podcaster you listen to actually loved one of these drafts that I'm about to bring up, and so therefore it's not underrated. But for me, the 7 ones that I think are underrated, given what I am hearing. So this doesn't necessarily mean the 7 best, just 7 that I think aren't getting enough credit. And one of them is the Arizona Cardinals. This one was so underrated. I actually disliked, I put them as one of my 7 losers in my original day 1 recap. And then I kind of thought about it and said, what am I talking about? This was a great night for them because what they did was, it was the Will Anderson trade. Their big move of this draft, again, I don't necessarily love any of the picks they made. I don't really hate them either. Kind of just, a little bit underwhelming, maybe, some of the picks they made. But their biggest move they made was they got, a ton of value from the Will Anderson trade. They gave up pick number 13, but they got pick number 12 back, which they then, would trade back up. But they got pick number 12 back as well as pick 33, and also a first round pick in 2024 and a third round pick in 2024, but not just any first round pick in 2024, the Texans first round pick. If it was the Browns first round pick, that wouldn't feel as significant. But with the Texans first round pick, again, currently the Vegas odds has the 2 teams that are, have the highest odds of being picking first overall next year are the Cardinals and the Texans. Both of those picks belong to the Cardinals. So this is incredible stuff for the Cardinals, that trade alone. And again, I like Paris Johnson Jr. as a player. I would like him more at, round 13 than at round 6. Didn't love the trade up, but I like BJ Ojulari. They had some other selections that I enjoyed. I think that the picks itself kind of underwhelmed me, and I think I've underwhelmed some other people, and I've made this draft underrated from them. But again, I'm including trades in what your draft is, because why wouldn't you? It's how much value do you get out of the picks that you have, and they now have a ton of value for the future and should be, in this rebuild, should be moving in the right direction, which is very exciting if you're a Cardinals fan. The other draft that, these are the 2 I put in my winners category as well as the underrated category, the Rams. I think the Rams are a team that had a great draft. They ended up with 14 selections, and I feel like I was, again, when I made my video talking about it, I was just kind of, going through and just basically saying, wow, this is a good pick. Okay, this is a good pick. Okay, this is a good pick, just through each one. And again, they acquired so many picks, and this is what the Rams do, right? They trade away their first round picks, but then they draft well in the later rounds, and they get so many selections in the later rounds. Despite the fact that they don't pick in the first round very often, the Rams are actually a team that constantly is drafting. They constantly get a lot of picks, and they're usually one of the teams that's towards the highest in terms of actual picks in each draft. They typically have, over the, expected 8, which is the average, what the average team has. Usually they get more than that because they trade down and because they, do what they can to acquire those later picks. And it's been a good strategy for them, won them a Super Bowl. So the Dolphins are a team that's on this list. There's going to be a couple teams like this where, if you don't have a first round pick, how much credit are you really going to get? How much are people going to pay attention to you? They didn't even have a top 50 pick in this draft class. So yeah, you're not going to talk a ton about them. And in fact, they only had 4 picks, period. They barely showed up in the draft. They had, pick 197 and 238. You're only going to get so much value out of that. But the 2 picks they did have, I really liked. Cam Smith and Devin Achane. Cam Smith, a corner who I had a first-round grade on. They got him at 51, so I'm a huge fan of that, and I think that could be great for them. And then Devin Achane, listen, if you only have a couple of premium picks, a couple of top 100 picks, barely, only 2 picks in the top 196 overall selections, is it smart to spend one on a running back? Well, that's a fair argument to make, but I think Achane should be perfect in that system and could be a really good back and really help them out a lot. So again, how much value is there in that? Fair question. But I think that, they made the most of what they had, which is why I think it's maybe not my favorite draft, but definitely a very underrated draft and one that probably should get more attention. The Bills are here as well. The Bills are a team that, I really loved their draft. I feel like not a ton of people talked about it from what I saw about it. And again, they didn't have, their first pick was 25, so they're not getting a superstar necessarily. But, you make the most out of what your draft value is, and they went out and they got Dalton Kincaid and Osiris Torrance, two guys that I had first-round grades on, and again, I only had 27 first-round grades in this draft class, so getting two of those guys when you only pick once in the top 58 is pretty good, and I think that they could be really good. I don't know why Osiris Torrance fell so much. I'm assuming people don't love his his speed and his athleticism, but I still think he's going to work at the NFL level. Could be a Pro Bowl caliber guard, in my opinion, and Kincaid can be a Pro Bowl caliber tight end. So getting two of those players, the rest of the draft class didn't move the needle too much for me, but those two picks certainly did. So that's why I have them as winners. I didn't have, not winners, as an underrated draft class is what I meant to say. The Chargers are another underrated draft class because, again, people just have widely different opinions on Quentin Johnson. There's people like me that think he's clearly the best receiver in his draft class and you could justify spending a top 10 pick on in the right situation. And then there's people that think that he shouldn't have even been a first rounder. So because of that, you're going to get some people disagreeing on it. One thing I liked was they didn't draft for need there. They just draft the best receiver that they felt was available because there's definitely a better fits, right? Like Jordan Addison would have fit that scheme better, but just get the better player. Who knows where you're going to be in a couple of years. I think that's smart. I also like Tuli Tuilupu, who they selected at 54. It was a bit of a reach, was projected to go 63rd, but I actually like him. I think he's good. I think it's worth a mid-second round pick on someone like him. In a lot of my mock drafts, I ended up selecting him around that point. And then Dayan Henley, linebacker, got him as a little bit of a steal. Didn't necessarily love some of the other selections a little bit later, but whatever, past the top 100. I think this was an underrated draft, maybe one that, again, I really like Quentin Johnson, so that's why I think that maybe it deserves a bit more attention. Then we have a couple more teams that are underrated because they didn't have a first-round pick, but I think did some good stuff. Like the Denver Broncos, again, only 5 selections. I don't know how much time we have to spend on this, but I think getting Drew Sanders, the projected 41st overall pick, getting him at 67 was really good. Marvin Mims and Riley Moss, I don't know how much they're moving the needle one way or the other. I just like the Drew Sanders pick. So I'm going to put them as an underrated draft because of that. Again, team that did not pick in the top 62, but made the most out of what they had, in my opinion. We then finally have the last team on this list, a team that had a really good draft, I thought. But again, their first pick was at 74, so it's not going to get that much attention. The Cleveland Browns, I thought, came away with a pretty good haul, despite the fact that they had very little draft capital. I think the big pick, in my opinion, is the big player that they got, DeJuan Jones, the 6'8", 370-pound, offensive lineman who was projected to go 46. They got him at 111th, and in fact, you look at their picks, they had 6 selections. Only one of them, they selected a player before they were supposed to go on the consensus big board. Everyone else, they were getting later than a lot of people thought they would go. Cedric Tillman was supposed to go 65th. They get him at 74th. Sia Ika was supposed to go at 68th. They got him at 98. Even like Luke Weipler, who was supposed to go at 82nd, they got him at 190. And also Dorian Thompson-Robinson is just an interesting selection. He was projected to go 138. They got him at 140. So, massive steal there. But, I just think that's an interesting selection as well. Could be a good quality backup for them and someone who I really like and think maybe has starter potential someday. Probably the one guy I like in this sort of backup class that might end up potentially being a starter someday. But if not, I think could still be a good backup just with his athleticism and kind of matches what Watson does. So should fit that scheme as well on top of it. So yeah, maybe not perfect drafts on these 7, but, I still have 2 of them ended up on my winners list as well. And they all, I think, were better than maybe some other people might think and maybe deserve more attention. So those are my 7 underrated drafts. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.